Welcome to College Football Live, presented by Mazda.
It's championship week Wednesday, and that also means we're 4 days away from finding out who's in. And two guys who are in our show today, Dusty Dvorak and Todd McShay. I'm Cassidy Hubbarth. And guys, last night, the penultimate top four were revealed as we take a look at this week's college football playoff rankings brought to you by AT&T. No movement in the top five as Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Georgia, and Utah all hold rank. And with Wisconsin moving up after their win versus Minnesota, all of the top 8 teams will be in action on championship weekend, meaning playoff berths are completely up in the air. It also means the committee will have a whole lot to pay attention to as they get ready for Selection Day on Sunday right here on ESPN. But since it's the giving season, we thought we'd do their job for them. So I'm going to lay out some scenarios, and you guys tell me basically who's in. So let's run through the first scenario, and stay with me, okay? The first thing to happen, Georgia loses, Utah wins, and depending on who wins between Oklahoma and Baylor, do they jump Utah for that 4th spot? Todd?
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias, having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football team right now. I have the utmost respect for Lincoln Riley. I think that they, offensively, they can outcoach just about any team in the country, but I don't think they're where they've been in years past. And I think the big difference is on the defensive side. Utah is physical. They look like Alabama. They're tough. They're almost impossible to run the ball on, and their numbers stack up with any team in the country. So I would go with Utah in that scenario.
Obviously, I'm going to disagree with you here, Todd, because to me, resume has to matter, right? I mean, who you beat matters. Like, look, Utah's a great team. I just did Arizona State, watched Utah against both those teams. That defensive line, it is serious. They can run the football, and their quarterback, Huntley's playing great. But they haven't beaten a ranked opponent, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. If Oklahoma beats Baylor in the Big 12 championship game, that'll be 2 wins against a top 10 opponent, not even coming at home. And they have a top 25 win by 18 on the road against Oklahoma State. So to me, I think it's a combination of finding the best 4 teams of resume and eye test. Me personally, I go more off of what have you done in those big games? Who have you beaten for who I'm going to select and put in there for the Final Four?
What about Oregon? Oregon will have been a ranked team that they will beat, assuming, in this situation. To me, I don't know. I watched the 2 teams, and one team lines up, and good luck running the football, good luck protecting your quarterback. The other team lines up, and they're really good, but it's not the same. And I think that Utah could move the ball against Oklahoma.
Well, Dusty, you say resume matters. This scenario is getting people heated, so let me throw this one at you. Top 2 teams win. Clemson loses to Virginia. Oklahoma and Utah win their conference championships. Dusty, is Clemson still in?
Gosh, my head just exploded because, first of all, I don't think this is going to happen. But I'm going to play your game, Cassidy. I see what you're doing here. Look, I'm going to stay consistent. I'm sorry, but I'm going to say Clemson's out. Look, I know what they look like off the hoof, and I know how talented a football team they are, and they got won 27 straight. But I'm sorry, they have not beaten a ranked opponent this year. Like, that has to come into play. That has to matter. I get that Texas A&M and South Carolina, they scheduled a non-conference and they're down. But that's the way the cookies crumbled. And if they lose to Virginia, would be the only top 25 team they faced and lose that game, I'm sorry, I'm going to put a Utah 12-1 Pac-12 champion beating Oregon, and I'm going to put an Oklahoma or potentially even a Baylor Big 12 champion in over Clemson. I know I just caused everybody to go crazy, but resume matters to me.
Dusty, I'm going to say inconsistent then. Because for most of these arguments, I really, I'm going to go to the strength of record. I'm going to go to the resume. I'm going to go to what they've done on the field. This is one of the best 4 teams in the country. I can't fight that. And I thought about it, and I flip-flopped a little bit, and I was looking at all the other teams and what their records are and who they've played. But Clinton, you cannot tell me that Clemson is not one of the best 4 teams in the country. That's the issue I have with it, and that's why your mind was blown, and I totally get it. But I cannot envision a picture without Clemson this year in the championship hunt, in the with the one of the final 4 teams that are part of the discussion.
I get it. In establishing these top 4, it's interesting, and it says best 4 teams. But to me, there is a gray area. What is best 4? Is it the 4 most deserving teams based off of who you've beat, where you've played them, how much you won by, or is it just who I think would win on a neutral field? Because if that's the case, I'm not so sure Clemson isn't the 1st or 2nd best team in college football. But as I said before, resume matters, and we have all these teams that have the same record. Whoever had the more quality victories in those big moments is who I am going to put in my top 4.
And thank you for correcting me. It's top 4, not final 4. That's hoops, Cassidy.
Exactly. But look, Todd, you're going to be the side analyst for that Clemson game. So a little part of you is kind of rooting for a good game there, maybe even an upset. That could just drive everybody wild. We'll see what happens. Right. No,
I think this is a moot point, guys. I think it's a moot point. Bronco Mendenhall in Virginia. Bryce Perkins had a great year, but I think they're going to walk into a buzzsaw against this Clemson team in the ACC championship.
You just don't want Dabo coming after you. That's what's happening
true.
here.
Good point.
All right. Scenario number 3. Georgia loses. Utah loses in the Pac-12 championship game. Baylor wins the Big 12 championship game. Wisconsin beats Ohio State. So does Baylor or 2-loss Wisconsin find a way in, Todd?
You had to ask me first, huh? I'm going with Wisconsin. Simply because they're just a better football team. I've got all these notes here. I've got all these scenarios. But I think Wisconsin is a better football team, and they would have beaten Ohio State. And that, to me, is the difference. And Oklahoma's a really good team. Baylor would have, bounced back after getting a huge lead against Oklahoma and giving it up. I think, to me, if you beat Ohio State, and you have even 2 losses, I think you deserve to be in the top 4 if you're Wisconsin.
Oh, Todd. You and I could not disagree more on a lot of these situations, and especially this one. I got to put in Baylor, man. I'm sorry, and don't lose to Lovie Smith in Illinois. My former coach, Chicago. Great win for Lovie, but to me, if you really want to be compared with Baylor, you got to win that game. And the fact that Baylor would have 1 blemish, and as you mentioned, up 25 against Oklahoma in that game in the first half. And since then, the way Baylor has responded, getting Texas down 24-3, going into Lawrence and completely throttling Kansas. I love the way Matt Rule's team has responded after that second half. And if they go 12-1, beat the number 6 team Oklahoma on a neutral field, avenge their only loss, I'd have to put them in my top 4.
I'm not saying you're right, but I will say it may be a little bit of Baylor bias. Seriously. I mean, I covered Baylor earlier in the year. You watch all the games, and they just find a way to win. It doesn't seem like they're dominating anybody. Maybe it is Baylor bias. I think Wisconsin's a better team, but I can completely understand if the committee decided, hey, Baylor's in.
Okay, I'm going to hit you now with a doomsday scenario because we're just having so much fun here. Assuming Clemson wins the ACC over Virginia, Georgia wins, Utah loses, Baylor wins, and Wisconsin wins in the championship game. Dusty, what's your top 4?
Well, my head just exploded, so I got to have a second to be able to exactly figure out what you just described. But what I think we would have in that situation. So help me out. So Georgia loses this game, is that correct?
Georgia wins.
Georgia,
Utah.
Okay, so it's very simple. Georgia's going to be your number 1 team. Okay, I think that Ohio State and LSU are in regardless. I think that those guys are in. And I think Baylor's the 4th spot. I mean, I think that Baylor in that spot, just like we said before, they beat Oklahoma. To me, that's the 4th team in.
Did Clemson win?
So Clemson wins. I have notes too, Todd. I have to keep it straight as well. See, we're really giving a pass to this, the committee, and showing how hard this is. But yes, go on, Todd.
Ohio State, I'm not putting them in any order, but Ohio State, Clemson, and the 2 SEC teams. I would go LSU and Georgia in that situation. If LSU loses, unless it's an absolute blowout and something crazy happens, I think LSU is in. And I think they deserve to be in. They've been the best team in the country outside of Ohio State all season long.
Okay, let's keep this crazy train going. I'm going to give you the ultimate doomsday.
Geez.
Okay, and this is the last one. This is the last one. All favorites lose. So Ohio State loses, LSU loses, Clemson loses, Utah loses, Oklahoma loses. Todd, who's your top four?
You know that emoji where the brain explodes? I just did that right here on national TV.
That's 3 times.
If all those
That's
teams lose, I think that Georgia goes to 1. I think Ohio State, LSU are 2 and 3, and as I mentioned, Baylor. The last scenario was one I thought this one was. The last one, I think you have the 2 SEC schools, Ohio State and Clemson. Here, this is what it would look like, and I think the entire college football world, they would have to figure out exactly what's going on in the world if this plays out this way.
I hope the graphic lines up with what I'm about to say, but I think I would just go back to the basics. I would go with Ohio State. I would go with LSU. I would go with Georgia, and then Clemson as well.
You guys, we've either cleared this.
I said Wisconsin, I guess, earlier. What do I know?
We've either cleared this all up for the committee, did their job for them, or just confused everybody, including ourselves. But look, that's what we love about college football. It's a beautiful chaos. So one final thought, though, about what you think is going to happen, out of this weekend, Dusty.
Personally, I think this is all going to be kind of a moot point, except for the first scenario. I actually think most of the favorites are going to win this week, and I think it's going to come down to what does the committee favor? Is it a 12-1 Utah or is it a 12-1 Oklahoma? And that's going to be the big debate that we all can't wait to see how it unfolds.
That's 100% it. If LSU beats Georgia, there's 1 spot left, and I think it comes down to Pac-12 versus Big 12. I would go Pac-12. You would go Big 12. No surprise. We'll see what happens.
All right, don't forget to vote for which team you think will be the Dr. Pepper One Final Team by using the hashtag One Final Team. And Sunday, we'll have the exclusive reveal of the college football playoff matchups. And Reese and the guys will also unveil the New Year's Six Bowls. It's a 4-hour special starting at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on ESPN and the ESPN app. And speaking of those New Year's Six Bowls, here are the latest projections as what teams will be filling in those games. Memphis is projected as the highest non-Power 5 team, while Virginia is projected to earn a trip to the Orange Bowl for the first time in program history. Coming up, will Tua stay or will he go?
Now is not the time to be making emotional decisions, but now you got to change into thinking as a businessman. You got to make business decisions. And
Welcome back to College Football Live, presented by Mazda.
Tua Tagovailoa once sat atop Todd's top 32, but has since fallen with his season-ending hip injury having an impact on his latest rankings. We'll get more of Todd's thoughts on Tua in just a bit, but he spoke with our Kirk Herbstreit on if he's even going to enter the draft.
So the big question a lot of people have is just an assumption because of the world we live in. He's going pro. Well, he's played his 3 years. He's going to go pro. Then you have this injury. People still just assume you're going to go pro. What's going to go through your mind in order to finally come to a decision like that?
yeah, well, I think you got to think of both sides of the spectrum. You think of risk reward on, coming back. You think of risk reward on leaving. If I come back, the risk is, what if I get hurt again? But the reward could be, maybe I jump back to the top of the charts, in the boards, for all these teams. Now you look at the other side of the spectrum. If I leave, the risk is, do I still go in the first round? Or, do I even make it to the second round? And, I mean, these guys don't even know, if I can play with, the hip injury yet, too. And then, I'd say the reward and all of that is, yeah, I'll be getting paid millions, but, I mean, a lot of the money that I could have made, you can't make that money up now. What I feel is, heavy on my heart that is the right thing to do for me, then, I'll do it, whether it's tomorrow, or on the 20th of January, then, that'll be it.
Or right now, you can just tell us.
All right.
So Dusty, you can clearly hear he's conflicted. What's your reaction to, his emotions there and the decision he has in front of him?
Well, he's in a tough spot. You know, I think he is a mature, well-spoken, just quality young man. And I thought his answer there was really good, because this is an important decision. And it is time for him to be selfish. It is a business decision. Tua Tagovailoa has put enough on tape in major college football to be able to cash in and make a lot of money. If I was him, I wouldn't step foot back on a college football field. Now, whether or not he comes out in this draft, I think that's still up for debate. I would take the information that I'm given from the NFL, from as many advisors that I deem worthy of having a quality opinion, and I get with my family, and I make the best business decision for me and my future. But it's going to be interesting to find out in these next couple of weeks. I would imagine Tua and his family are going to be trying to gather as much quality information as they can to make a well-informed decision on such a big part of his future, Todd.
Yeah, Tua should never take another snap in college football. He shouldn't. And I rarely say that. I don't like to say that. Coaches hate when I say that, and I have to deal with them all year long. And I want everyone to come back to school and to do what they want to do, and he's going to make his own decision. But you have to understand the business decision here. You're talking about, if you're the first overall pick, $32 million, right in that neighborhood. Every pick that goes by, it's approximately $1 million that gets dropped off. So if he goes 16 overall, then you're talking about $16 million in guaranteed money that Tua has lost. And to me, the hip is the hip, and they're going to have to evaluate it, and he's going to go where he goes. But at the end of the day, going back to school and risking another injury, if my son had this situation, I would tell him, you know what, you got to go. It's time to
Todd,
look at the business, not at Alabama.
Yes or no? Is he still a first-round pick?
Yes.
All right. Well, look, he is expected to make a full recovery, and Alabama's orthopedic surgeon did tell our Laura Rutledge that he is able to begin athletic activity within 3 months. So we hope he has a speedy recovery. Right now, though, we want to take a moment to remember the late, great Stuart Scott. And today, to honor our friend and to drive awareness to cancer research, today is officially Stuart Scott Day. And we're celebrating this day, and you can support the Stuart Scott Cancer Research Fund at v.org/donate. And Stu was a dear friend of mine, as he was to so many people. When I first started at ESPN in 2010, he was one of the first people to reach out to me, a legend. And, you know, he always found ways to encourage me and to help me find my way here at ESPN. And my story is not unique. He made everyone feel like they were his best friends. His energy was contagious, and he still is one of my biggest mentors today. He is one of a kind. He is cooler than the other side of the pillow. He is Booyah.
Booyah. That's it. In a word, that's what he brought to SportsCenter.
Top 5, booyah! Royce Clayton takes Juan Guzman out.
It was somehow related to old Mr. G, who was a neighbor of his best friend. His best friend's named Fred. He was punctuating the sound of thunder.
One day when lightning crashed, yelled some booyah sound, and Stu owned it. Like when it became his, it became his.
First time I heard booyah, I think I jumped a little bit.
I just started cracking up because me and my friends would say that sometimes when we're watching a game or if we're playing spades and you drop a trump card and you're like, booyah!
Ken Griffey Jr., waiting, booyah!
Expressive, explosive.
Pop and lock, booyah! It was the individuality. It was the personality.
Some people just call him Booyah. Who's on the show? Who are you working with? Booyah and you.
It was different. It was like, what? What? Yeah. Does that fit? Well, yeah, it did.
Third inning, Derek Jeter in first, booyah! Alex Rodriguez, second homer in 2 nights.
Has there ever been another word to describe what I just saw happen on screen? No.
Again, you won between number 5 Utah and number 13 Oregon, Friday, 8 Eastern on ABC or the ESPN app. And guys, a lot of football to watch this weekend. Which Power 5 underdog do you think could pull off the upset, Dusty?
I'm going with the Georgia Bulldogs against LSU. Look, this is an experienced Georgia team, 3rd straight SEC championship game, and it's the matchup of the weekend. Number 2 defense in college football, the number 2 offense in college football, defense, physicality, experience. I think Georgia is a live dog in the SEC title game.
I'm with you. I think Georgia, to me, when you can play great defense in a championship game, when you can run the football, I know DeAndre Swift has got the shoulder injury, but he's still so talented. And when you have a quarterback who's going to prepare and be ready the way that Jake Fromm is going to be ready, to me, they have the best shot of all these underdogs.
You guys enjoy championship weekend. Remember, Selection Day on ESPN, noon Eastern. Yes, our minds are all still blown.